before the world demands anything of you, before the noise begins. There is a moment, a single breath between sleep and waking, a threshold. In that threshold, something is decided. Most people surrender that moment without knowing it. They reach for their phone. They invite the chaos in. They hand their mind, the only empire they will ever truly rule, to whoever shouts loudest. But we do not. We have learned, through pain, through failure, through the long and humbling school of self-examination, that the greatest war we will ever fight is not fought in the world. It is fought within, and like any war, it demands that we know our enemies, not the enemies who raise their fists against us, the ones who smile, the ones who walk beside us, sit at our tables, share our air, and quietly, methodically drain us of the very thing we are trying to build: clarity, virtue, and an unshakable inner life. Marcus Aurelius, commanding the greatest empire on earth, still wrote to himself in the darkness of his tent, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was not speaking to an army. He was speaking to himself, because he understood that the corruption of the soul does not come from empires or battlefields. It comes from the people we allow inside the walls. Today we name them, not to condemn, not with hatred in our hearts, but with the cold, clear eyes of those who have chosen themselves, their peace, their purpose, their becoming, above the comfortable lie of unlimited tolerance. 7 kinds of people, 7 quiet dangers. Let us walk through them together. 1. The complainer. The one who has made suffering their identity. You know this person. Perhaps you have been this person, as many of us have in our darker seasons. They carry their wounds like medals, displayed at every gathering, polished with repetition. Their language is a landscape of injustice. The world has wronged them. The circumstances are always impossible. The timing is never right. Someone is always to blame, and that someone is never found in a mirror. There is a seduction in the complainer's world. They offer you something dangerous: permission. Permission to also be a victim. Permission to also surrender agency to circumstance. When you sit long enough in a room full of complaint, you begin to breathe it in, this philosophy of helplessness, without ever choosing it. Epictetus, who was born a slave, not metaphorically but literally, a man whose body belonged to another, said this: "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. Let that land." A man who had every earthly reason to complain, who had suffered genuine crushing injustice at the hands of the world, chose instead to locate his freedom in the only place it could never be taken: his own perception. The complainer has not yet made this discovery, and until they do, their company is a gravity, pulling us downward into the mud of the unchangeable past. We do not hate them, we understand them, but we recognize that chronic complaint is not a personality trait. It is a philosophy, a worldview that says, "I am acted upon, I do not act," and that philosophy is contagious. Guard your mornings from this voice. Guard your mind from this lens. When you catch the habit of complaint forming in your own throat, and you will, because we are all human, ask the only question that matters: is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, release it. There is no third option that leads anywhere worth going. 2. The flatterer, the one who trades truth for comfort. This enemy is more dangerous than the first because they do not feel like an enemy at all. They feel like warmth. They find you brilliant in your mediocrity. They call your recklessness boldness. They agree with everything you say, not because you're always right, but because agreement is their currency. The coin they use to buy your proximity, your favor, your resources. Seneca, one of the most powerful men in Rome who understood flattery from every conceivable angle, wrote with unmistakable urgency, "Avoid those who are gloomy and always lamenting, and shun those who are suspicious and find fault with everything. Choose as a friend a person who will tell you the truth. The flatterer is the antithesis of the friend Seneca describes. They are architects of comfortable illusions. And we, if we are honest, have loved them for it. Because the truth is hard. The mirror of genuine friendship is hard. It is far easier to surround ourselves with voices that echo our preferences back to us, shaped and polished until they no longer resemble reality. But what is the cost? Consider the emperor surrounded by yes-men, convinced of his infallibility, walking blindly toward the cliff's edge, flanked by people applauding his direction. The flatterer does not push you off the edge. They simply never warn you it is there. This is perhaps the most insidious violence one person can commit against another, the withholding of truth in the name of kindness. We must learn to distinguish the voice that soothes from the voice that serves. The friend who tells you what you need to hear even when their voice shakes. That person is gold. Find them, keep them, thank them even when it hurts, and become that person for others. Because the world does not need more comfort, it needs more courage. 3. The chaos carrier, the one who lives in permanent disorder. Look around their life and you will find the evidence immediately. Their relationships are always in crisis. Their finances are always one emergency from collapse. Their plans are always undermined by catastrophe, and the catastrophe is always just beyond their responsibility. Every week brings new drama, a new injustice, a new story in which they are at the center, buffeted by forces they never seem to learn to anticipate. Do not mistake this for bad luck. There is such a thing as genuine misfortune. We do not deny it. The Stoics never denied it. They simply refused to be defined by it. What we are describing is something different. A person who has made disorder their native habitat, who at some unconscious level requires turmoil to feel alive, who, when given peace, manufactures urgency. Because stillness for them is not a gift, it is a threat. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "Words never intended for public eyes. The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. The chaos carrier violates both, and when we allow them deep into our lives, we inherit their disorder. Their emergencies become our emergencies. Their crises colonize our calendar. Their noise fills the silence we have worked so hard to protect. We are not required to save everyone. This is a lesson that costs many of us dearly before we learn it, because the impulse to help is noble. But there is a difference between extending a hand to someone climbing and being pulled over the ledge by someone falling. Discernment here is not cruelty, it is wisdom. Protect your order, because your order is not a luxury. It is the structure inside which your best self can breathe. The envious. The one who cannot bear your light. Envy is unique among the destructive emotions because it requires your success as its fuel. The envious person does not merely want what you have, they want you to not have it. There is a difference, and it is the difference between ambition and poison. You will recognize them by the subtle ways they diminish, the small dismissive comment dressed as a joke, the minimizing of your achievement, the sudden coldness when you share good news, the way they redirect every conversation back to their own narrative when yours begins to shine. Envy, Seneca understood, is one of the most corrosive forces in human society. Envy is the enemy of the fortunate. But here is what they do not teach you. The envious person is also the enemy of themselves. They have locked their sense of worth into a zero-sum calculation. Your gain is their loss. They have made joy conditional on others' diminishment. This is not living. It is a self-constructed prison with no key. We do not need to be angry at them, but we must be clear-eyed. Because the envious person will never genuinely celebrate you. They will never be a true ally on your path. And if you are not careful, their lens will begin to infect yours. You will start to measure your life against others, to feel that someone else's sunrise somehow dims your own. It does not. It never did. Your path is not a competition. It is a calling, and the only verdict on your life that matters is the one you will one day render from the most honest corner of your own soul. Live for that verdict. 5. The pleasure seeker, the one who has mistaken comfort for happiness of all 7. This one wears the most appealing face, because pleasure is not wrong. Let us be precise here. The Stoics were never against joy, never against beauty, never against the warmth of life. What they were against was slavery, and the pleasure seeker has sold their sovereignty for softness. They have built their entire existence around the avoidance of discomfort. Every decision filters through the question, will this feel good? Every challenge reframed as optional. Every discipline that requires sacrifice quietly abandoned. They mistake the absence of pain for the presence of meaning. And they will invite you into this bargain because misery loves company, but so does comfort. It is not that I'm so smart, wrote no Stoic, but Epictetus said something better. No man is free who is not master of himself. The pleasure seeker is not free. They are governed by appetite, by the body's constant referendum on what feels pleasant. And when you spend time in their orbit, you begin to absorb their philosophy. Why struggle? Why resist? Why not simply take the easier path? The easier path leads somewhere. We have seen where it leads. We are not here to punish ourselves. We are not here to seek suffering for its own sake. That is not wisdom. That is theater. But we are here to build something. And building requires that we become comfortable with discomfort. That we learn to read the sensation of difficulty not as a warning, but as a signal. A signal that we are growing. That we are forging something in ourselves that ease could never create. The iron is shaped by the hammer, not by the velvet. Remember that when the softer voice whispers. 6. The gossip. The one who builds themselves from others' rubble. Their conversational architecture is always the same. It begins with a name, then a story, then a judgment. delivered with the particular satisfaction of someone who has found, at last, a domain in which they feel powerful. The gossip does not create, they comment. They do not build, they appraise. And their currency is always the reputation of the absent. Marcus Aurelius asked himself a question that should live on the walls of every room we enter. How much more harmful are the consequences of anger and grief than the circumstances that aroused them? But consider also this from his meditations, his private examination of his own conduct. Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. The gossip has made a quiet trade, self-respect for social currency. They have discovered that sharing the failures and secrets of others buys them attention, affiliation, a temporary sense of belonging, and the price, their own integrity, is paid so gradually, they rarely notice the account is empty. Here is what we know. The person who gossips to you will gossip about you. This is not cynicism, it is pattern recognition. More importantly, every hour spent in the narration of other people's lives is an hour not spent building your own. The gossip has outsourced their interior life to the exterior drama of others. They have no time for self-examination because they are perpetually examining everyone else. We choose differently. When we catch ourselves speaking of others, we ask, is it true? Is it necessary? Does it serve anyone? And if silence is the answer, we learn to be comfortable in that silence, because a mouth that does not wound is already practicing a kind of virtue. 7. The Cynic, the one who has confused wisdom with surrender. Last, and perhaps the most tragic, because the Cynic was often, once, someone who cared. They hoped, they reached, they tried, and the world, in its indifference or cruelty, handed them back something that looked like proof that nothing changes. That idealism is for the naive, that the only rational response to existence is a kind of protective, preemptive disappointment. And now, they offer this as a gift. They call it realism. They call it experience. They position their cynicism as sophistication, as something you earn on the far side of enough pain. But there is a crucial distinction that must not be lost. Stoicism is not cynicism. The Stoic looks at a difficult world and says, I cannot control this, but I can control my response, my virtue, my presence within it. I will act well regardless. The Cynic looks at a difficult world and says, nothing matters. Do not bother. One is a philosophy of agency. The other is a philosophy of abdication. Seneca, near the end of his life, a life that included exile, political terror, the threat of death by one of the most dangerous emperors in history, still wrote, while we are postponing, life speeds by. Not the words of a man who had surrendered. Not the words of someone who had allowed hardship to calcify into contempt. The words of a man who had chosen, again and again, in the face of everything, to believe that the examined life was worth living, that virtue was worth pursuing, that the morning was worth meeting. The Cynic in your life will not always attack your hope openly. More often they will simply exhaust it. 1,000 small doses of dismissal, 1,000 sideways glances at your ambition, until the fire, if you are not tending it, begins to dim. Tend the fire. Look at what unites these 7. Not malice, not always, not evil, not in most cases. What unites them is this: They have each, in their own way, surrendered the governance of their inner life to something outside themselves. Circumstance, appetite, approval, bitterness. And in that surrender, they have become forces of outward corruption. Not because they intend to harm us, but because disorder, like disease, does not require intention to spread. We have felt this pull, every one of us. We have complained. We have flattered. We have sought comfort over growth. We have gossiped, envied, doubted, surrendered. In our worst moments, we have embodied every one of these types. The difference is not that we are better people. The difference is that we noticed, and in noticing we chose. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and still found himself exhausted, tempted, grieving, uncertain, wrote the most important instruction anyone has ever committed to paper. Confine yourself to the present, not the past where the wounds live, not the future where anxiety breeds. Here, now, this moment, this choice, this breath. Who you allow into your inner world is not a small decision. It is not a social preference or a personality quirk. It is the architecture of your becoming. Every conversation is a curriculum. Every relationship is a philosophy, lived in real time. Choose your curriculum with the seriousness it deserves, because you're not merely managing a social life. You are building a soul, and the soul, like any great thing, is shaped not just by what we add to it, but by what we refuse to let in. Guard the gate, do the work, and walk forward, as we always have, into the morning that is waiting.